Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Facebook Live. I'm Diane Ray, co-founder of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network, and we're doing another Meet the Podcasters today in our famous series. So I'm glad you could join me today because I'm very excited to welcome my guest. But I want to tell you first a little bit about MindBodySpirit.fm. If you don't remember, we're a podcast network of over 60 podcasters, all sharing information that we hope is going to be a holistic sanctuary for the soul, a place where listeners can find unique content, inspiration, and also to cultivate a more fulfilling life. We all need that today. You can discover exclusive podcasts that inspire transformation and offer ideas to help cope with day-to-day life. So go to mindbodyspirit.fm online to check out our full lineup of shows. We've got over 60 podcasters there. So today I am welcoming someone who has recently won a Women in Podcasting Award for Best Faith-Based Podcast, a guided life podcast, and she is Laura West. And she's a gifted intuitive whose path to mediumship began over 20 years ago. And she shares her gifts on her podcast as well as with her private clients. And she also does energy healings. We're going to find out all about her and all about her work. So welcome, Laura. I'm so glad you could join me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm still getting used to doing these Facebook Lives. It's so crazy. I'm
Oh,
a radio person. What do I know?
I mean, do we ever
So
get used to doing these? I don't know.
I don't know. All of a sudden, we're TV hosts. Life was easier when I was just doing radio, but here I am, and I'm glad that you could join me today. So I want to let people know who are not familiar with your podcast, how long you've been doing it and what got you started.
Yeah, goodness. I've been doing it now for, I want to say, probably 2.5 years, maybe a little bit longer. And what got me started was just following my intuition into what I was meant to do next. It was between that or starting a blog. And I had this really good conversation with my brother in law about doing a podcast because he has a pretty successful podcast himself. And my whole thing was, well, I'm just a I'm just a full-time working woman, mother, like, living in the suburbs. What do I have to say that's interesting? And so he gave me the confidence to share that. And I liked the idea of being able to speak to guests and capturing the emotion that I think blogging doesn't quite capture. So that was when I decided to go that route, and I've never looked back.
Well, I love that because one of the things I love about podcasting is that it kind of puts the power of communication and sharing your message and your vision in the hands of everybody, right? I mean, anybody can
Yeah.
start a podcast and a lot of people quit, they just can't stick to it. But I mean, you've stuck at it for a couple of years now, and then now you can actually say you're an award-winning podcast, which is really cool. I bet you never thought that would happen, did you?
No, I that's just one episode at a time. So I was very, very, very thrilled to receive that award.
I know, it's so fun. Well, what do you enjoy most about podcasting now that you've been doing it for a couple of years?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think for me, one, I have learned so much with the guests that I've had on, having conversations about things spiritual related that I never imagined. And sharing these with people too, not just through the podcast, but having discussions with family and friends about what I've been learning. I've learned that I really enjoy editing, which is maybe why I've stuck with it for so long, because I don't mind the editing process at all. I love that sort of zoning out repetitive work of cleaning it up and the final result of that. And honestly, the fuel that keeps me going episode after episode is when I receive feedback from people of how an episode opened up their perspective, changed their perspective, gave them hope, helped them to not feel alone. All these things that I was hoping my podcast would do and is doing. So really it's I mean it's so cliche and kind of corny, but it's for the listeners mostly because they seem to be getting a lot out of it, and as long as they do and I enjoy it, I'll keep doing it.
It's so great to get that feedback, isn't it? And
Yeah.
listeners all over the world really can hear you, which is amazing. So you never know really who you're touching or who's really being impacted by what you're sharing or what you have to teach. But you and I are similar in that we're both, really interested in spirituality and kind of trying to make sense of the unknown. And I was reading on your website and you share, a little bit about your bio and about yourself. You come from kind of a I don't know if I'd say multicultural, but I guess that's true, a
Yeah.
Christian and Jewish background, right? So
Hmm.
you're exposed to both, and then also started having spiritual, mediumship experiences when you were younger. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, did you have both Christmas and Hanukkah growing up, or what was that like?
That's a good question. So, growing up multi-religion, multicultural. So my mom's Korean, my dad is white, for lack of a better term. He's got Eastern European descent, so Jewish, and then my mom was raised Christian. So we would go to both church and synagogue, and I'd be surrounded by Koreans and non-Koreans all the time. And so I don't know, growing up, it felt really nice to be exposed to both. I love being able to share that I grew up with both. And my parents were very open-minded and very understanding in that they let my sister and I choose which direction we wanted to take our spirituality. And so I think having that permission, especially as a child, was important. It allowed me to explore it. It allowed me to share with them when I had experiences or when I found Sylvia Brown books. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? I need to talk to somebody about this. I was so excited when I was a teenager. It allowed me to share when I had dream visitations from I had a dream visitation from Jesus, and then I would have a dream visitation from my spirit guides, and just all these things where I was able to share with them. And in doing so, it also helped me to realize how intuitive they both were. My dad would make comments. We would be watching X-Files together or Star Trek. He loves Star Trek. And he'd make comments at the dinner table before I even knew about reincarnation, before I even knew the possibility of parallel lives and all that good stuff and future lives and everything. And he would share that he felt like he was just born too soon. He's very technologically savvy. He's waiting for technology to catch up to where he thinks it needs to be, making comments like this at the dinner table. Or my mom talking to me or handing me books about Buddhist teachings, even though she was brought up, Christian. So just having that, I know I'm very, very lucky to have that exposure. It just really allowed me to explore and to nurture whatever experiences I started having at a young age to now, as far as
Yes, you were
meditation
very
or
lucky.
mediumship and stuff. Yes.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
hear from people or have heard the story of, they kind of tamped down those experiences or swept it under the rug and didn't want to share it with friends or family or anything because they thought they were crazy. But when you first told your parents, that you were having these experiences, and the one that you had mentioned on your site about your grandmother, was that your mother's mother or your father's mother?
Father's mother.
And so when you
Yeah.
had that experience, they were pretty open to that, or what was the reaction?
Yeah, they were definitely open to it. I think during the time there was a lot of, grieving and sadness because it's around the time that my grandmother had just passed away. So just to give a little backstory, I was in high school at the time, and we went to go visit my grandmother who was dying from cancer. And we visited her in hospice, and we got to see her there, respirator breathing for her. She was a shell of a person, and this is my Jewish New York grandmother, right? So it was such a big contrast of her big personality, seeing her laying there. And then that night, after we drove to Arizona to go see them, that night I had a dream and I saw my grandmother come into my dream, and I said, "Grandma, you're all better." And she said, "Yes, I am." And then the next morning we found out she had passed during the night. So I shared that with my family, and they actually took a lot of comfort in that. And whenever anyone in my family would have dreams of people who family members who've passed or who, would visit them. We share that with each other because we know it means more just innately.
Right. That's such an incredible experience to have. And you also talked about that you have met your spirit guides, and
Yes,
there's more than
yes.
one. Tell me about
Yes.
that, because I'd love to meet mine or an angel. I'm
Oh,
still looking.
yes. So, yeah, that was a pretty incredible experience. So, when I picked up Sylvia Brown books for the first time, I was probably in my late teens, early 20s, around there, and I learned about spirit guides for the first time then. And I wanted to meet mine, and she mentioned, you can ask them to come visit you in your dreams. So I did that, and it took a couple weeks for my spirit guide to show up. But I finally had a dream where I saw this man standing there, and I just knew in my dream to ask him, "Are you my spirit guide?" And he said yes. And then I asked him what his name was. He said Jason, and that was it. So yes, I met Jason. I got his name. I was very happy to have received that information. I met a second spirit guide just a few years ago, the same way. Her name's Lana. Same way. I saw her, and there was nothing in this dream to signify that she was a spirit guide. In fact, we were in a grocery store and she was mopping up at the end of the shift. And but I knew to ask her if she was my spirit guide. She said yes. And I asked her name, same conversation I did with Jason, and she said Lana. So that's how I met her. I've met my guardian angel before through a guided meditation as well. And that was really neat because it was unexpected, the outcome of that. So I met him that way. But I do share that asking for them to come visit in dreams, uh, meditations, guided or not, are helpful. Channel writing, that sort of thing. There's just different ways that we can meet them.
That's so true. I had this experience not too long ago where I did that, asking for my mother to come into a dream. I just said, "Oh, can you help me? Give me some information. What should I do?" I was asking for advice. And what happened in the dream was she kind of came in the dream, and it was like a scenario where we were in my old apartment and she was helping me. But that's kind of what she did, was that she would help me with things, and she was helping me unpack in this dream. And it wasn't really sharing an answer, but just letting me know that she was there and there to help was kind of the message. And I had never had that happen where I actually asked and then had, some confirmation. So it really does work, people. If you're thinking it doesn't work, if you're
It
listening to
does.
this, try it. It does. And it may take a couple of tries, because I had done it before and nothing happened. But just recently I had that experience. So, and it's so great when you can,
Mhm.
remember it and you wake up, "Oh, wow, this happened."
Yeah, yeah. I like to write it down right away too, because as you know, the day goes on, we forget little details.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you also work with people individually, right? Or privately. Do you do coaching sessions or mediumship readings?
Yeah, not coaching sessions, but I do mediumship readings. I have sort of put those on hold a little bit for now, but I do mediumship readings for people, whether they want to meet mostly it's to meet like their spirit guides. But I will say that family members who have passed love to come through too. So I really don't like to limit who I don't know, allow to come through. I've even had the goddess of astrology, didn't even know she existed, but
Oh, wow.
she came through. All right. Yeah. So I just, whoever, I leave it open. Well, loving energies, of course, but I leave it open.
Yes. And when people ask you, if they say, "Oh, I really want to have a connection, with someone who passed, an ancestor or my grandmother or something," what would be a tip that you could tell them? Like, definitely ask before a dream. But are there other things that you do to kind of enhance having that connection?
I do. I think one of the simplest ways is to remind people how intuitive they are. And so picking up on signs that our loved ones leave us. And how do you know it's a sign versus just a coin you found on the floor or something like that? Well, what is your first thought when you find that coin on the floor? Is your first thought, your grandmother who passed or your significant other who passed. And if there's that thought, then that's a sign from them that they're, communicating to you, most likely that they're just reminding you that they're there, and that they are still very much aware of everything that's going on. So to me, I feel like that's a really good step, is just to, when you come across something that could be a sign, or you see something, take note if the first thought that you have is your loved one. And if it is, then know that that is definitely a sign from them. Easy to second guess ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I think a lot of times we talk ourselves out of it when we have an experience like that and just want to say, oh no, this can't be possible, when it is. So I think we want to discount those kinds of experiences.
It's true.
Do you think that, having some of these things happen to you from a young age and experiencing mediumship, do you think it's made you less afraid of the other side of death? Because people don't really like to talk about that.
So I love that question. I feel like there's like the physical body me and then the spiritual body me. Spiritual body me, no, because I feel like when my time is here, it'll be so quick. It'll be like, oh, I died. Like that's it. I'm on the other side. I feel great. Physical body me though is like, I I want to make sure I don't die because I have my family. I've got things that I feel like I'm not finished with. So I think in a sense there is that human fear of death still, just because of my loved ones and everything that I feel like I still have to do here. But as far as the actual act of dying, you hear so many of these stories, of people who've had these death experiences, and I've had them on my show, and just the bliss that they feel, and the hardship is coming back into their body. So once you die and you don't run the risk of coming back into your body, I can see it probably be a pretty nice transition as far as that goes, and still being with your loved ones, just in a different form. But so in a way, I
I
guess it
think we're
changes a
afraid
bit.
of the physicality of it, right? The actual physical act
Yeah.
of what you go through, because we've seen our loved ones experience, whether it's cancer or Alzheimer's or something like
Mhm.
that. So of course, we're going to be afraid of that part. But then, like you said, your spiritual part, who is hopefully not going to be dreading or afraid of the bliss. I think it's just like having the time between those two experiences be short. I heard this
Yeah.
one comedian, I don't know if you know Mark Maron, and he said he wanted his last words to be like, wait, what? Like that's kind of how I want it to happen. Like, wait, what? Did this happen? Oh, okay. Now I
Like, oh,
know where
that's
I
it?
am.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we hope that time, in between those two things will be brief, but it's been
Yeah.
so cool to talk with you and introduce you to some people that may not be familiar with your podcast. So do you have any cool guests coming up, or maybe something you could share for people to look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've had such a wide range of guests, and I have a wide range of guests coming as well. So there seems to be something for everybody. But I really love the stories of people who have been to the other side and can share those experiences. I learned things like the other side smells like carnations. I'm like, what? Like, that's so cool because that's tangible to us. So I really like that. So I think just the wide range, and what I love too is the back catalog of episodes are evergreen and still applicable even now. So there's a wide range. I've got nearly 200 episodes in at this point, so plenty to dabble in and binge listen to.
Yeah, you've got a back catalog now. You
I
have
do.
archives. So people can go and check that out. And that's actually a good segue to let people know about our mindbodyspirit.fm app, because they can find your show on there, get the app for Apple or Android, download it, listen to, whatever they want, catch up on all your old shows. Also go to the website, mindbodyspirit.fm. You can find Laura and also find her on all your favorite podcast apps. She's everywhere: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Pandora, you name it. So I hope people that have not heard you before definitely check it out. And if you get a chance, check out some of the other amazing podcasters that we have as well on the mindbodyspirit.fm podcast network.